I had no idea my peaceful dream would turn into a living nightmare. Out of nowhere, the local HOA president, Karen Goodson, slapped me with a lawsuit, insisting my land was under her control, even though it legally wasn't. Her so-called proof? A 30-year-old expansion map she waved like it was scripture. The irony? Her entire case collapsed in less than 3 minutes. But to understand how it came to that, let me take you back to the very first time I met her. It was a crisp morning. My wife Amy and I had just driven the final nail into our new porch railing. We were relaxing in old rocking chairs, coffee mugs warming our hands, watching the fog lift from the trees. This was everything we had worked for. 2 years of saving every penny, then a year of grueling work transforming forgotten woodland into a sanctuary. No noise, no traffic, just silence and birdsong. Then came Karen, striding up my driveway like a general marching into battle. She wore a pastel pink pantsuit that practically shouted judgment. Her hair was sprayed into a helmet, so stiff it could have deflected a bullet. In her hand, a lawsuit packet stamped with the HOA's seal. "Good morning," she said, but her tone felt more like an accusation. She stopped at the bottom of our porch steps, scanning everything like a critic at a bad art show. Her eyes lingered on my handmade fire pit before sweeping across the forest around us. "I'm Karen Goodson, president of the High Pines Homeowners Association," she announced, as if crowning herself royalty. I sipped my coffee slowly, keeping my temper in check. Years in construction had taught me directness works best. "That's nice," I said evenly. "This is my property. What do you want?" Her smile was thin and sharp. "Well, that's just it. It's your property, but it's also covered by our community charter." She tapped her clipboard. "Which means you're bound by our covenants and bylaws. I've already noted 2 violations this morning." Amy's calm face hid the storm brewing in her eyes. She's the thinker. I'm the one who acts. And all I wanted was to tell this woman exactly where she could shove that clipboard. Instead, I forced my voice flat. "Violations? We just moved in." "The rules don't take vacations, sir," she replied, waiting for me to hand over my name. I didn't. "And you're trespassing," I shot back. "This land isn't under your HOA." Something dark flickered across her expression, the look of someone unaccustomed to hearing no. She pasted on a sweet smile. "I think you'll find that it is. According to the 1996 expansion map, this parcel falls under our jurisdiction. Now, about the violations. First, that fire pit. It's unapproved. All fire features must be gas-powered and enclosed in board-approved decorative housing." She said decorative housing like it was the most sacred phrase in English. "Second," she continued, gesturing toward the dense woods, "our rules require a park-like appearance. You'll need to clear at least 40% of these trees." I laughed, but not happily. It was the kind of laugh that comes before shouting. "You want me to cut down my trees? Trees that have been here 100 years before your HOA even existed?" "You've lost your mind." Amy's hand touched my arm gently. "Ma'am," she said smoothly, "there must be a mistake. We ran a full title search before buying. No covenants, no HOA." Karen's eyes narrowed. She gave Amy a dismissive, "Once over." "If there was an oversight, it was your realtor's fault, but ignorance of the law is no excuse." She pulled out a pink slip and extended it toward me. 30 days to comply. After that, daily fines begin. Welcome to the neighborhood. I didn't take it. Instead, I rose, the chair groaning behind me, and stepped closer. "I'll say this once. Get off my land. You're not welcome. Your fake rules are not welcome. And if you ever return, I'll have you cited for trespassing." She didn't. Blink, bullies rarely do. They think their authority makes them untouchable. She just smirked and set the slip on my porch step. "The association has rights. We can inspect, enforce, and maintain standards. You can resist, But you will comply. Everyone does. Eventually. With that, she turned and marched away, her spine stiff with arrogance. Amy wrapped her arm around me as we watched her car vanish down the dirt road. The pink slip on the step seemed to glow with menace. "What a miserable woman," Amy muttered. "She's more than miserable," I said, anger twisting in my chest. "She's a tyrant, and she just declared war." That slip wasn't just paper. It was a threat against everything I'd built. My cabin wasn't a house. It was a promise, a fortress I had carved with my own hands. To let her take it meant surrendering the dream Amy and I had fought so hard for. She thought I was just another pushover in a flannel shirt. She had no idea how stubborn I could be when it came to protecting my own. This was only the opening shot. A storm was coming, and Karen had no clue how badly she'd miscalculated. This whole fight wasn't just about power trips or strict HOA rules. It was something much bigger. Karen Tom wasn't simply a control freak. She was working for someone. She was the inside agent for a developer with one clear mission: drive people out, bankrupt them, then buy their homes for pennies. It was a cruel, brilliant plan. Make life miserable, raise fines, unleash pressure until families couldn't take it anymore, then swoop in and buy cheap. She and her partners would make millions, while an entire neighborhood vanished. The problem for her? My grandfather and a handful of old-timers weren't selling. They were the last defenders of a community built on decades of trust and hard work. They tried to fight back, went to the press, but the story never gained traction. Tried to hire a lawyer, but Karen's high-priced legal army buried them in paperwork until it was hopeless. They were left isolated. And when intimidation wasn't enough, Karen escalated. Breaking my grandfather's arm wasn't random. It was a tactic. A warning to everyone else. She wanted the whole neighborhood to see the cost of resistance. She thought she was fighting tired old men and women. What she didn't know was that she had just declared war on me. And I wasn't coming alone. The 72-hour countdown had started. I wasn't going to wait. I left the hospital and drove straight to my grandfather's house. The place still smelled of his pipe tobacco, but now there was something sharper underneath, the metallic tang of fear. The front door was cracked where someone had forced it. A lamp lay on the floor, its shade smashed. The house was no longer a home. It was a battlefield. By the afternoon, my cavalry arrived, not on horses, on Harleys. The rumble of a dozen big V-twins shook the whole street. The Iron Sentinels had come. My cousin Razor led the pack, towering, bearded, hands like hammers. Behind him was Bear, quiet but massive, his knuckles cracking like tree branches. Twitch came next, lean and twitchy, always fiddling with a wire or lock. And behind them, 10 more men who looked like they chewed nails for breakfast. They parked in a hard, straight line in front of my grandpa's place. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, torn between fear and hope. Razor swung off his bike and pulled me into a rib-crushing hug. "Heard you had trouble with the neighborhood watch," he said with a dark grin. "Something like that?" I muttered. "They broke Grandpa's arm." The humor drained from his face. His eyes turned sharp. "Who?" "HOA president. Name's Karen Tom. She's got hired muscle." "Not good enough muscle," Bear growled, cracking his knuckles again. Before we could plan further, a nervous figure hurried across the lawn. Fred, my grandpa's neighbor. He was pale, sweating, wringing his hands like always. "Cal, is it true about your grandfather?" he whispered in a panic. "It's true," I said firmly. "And these men are with you?" He pointed nervously at the wall of leather. "And denim." Twitch flicked open a switchblade and winked at him. Fred nearly fainted. "They're family," I told him. "They're here to help." "Help?" Fred stammered. "Oh dear, Cal, you don't understand. Karen has eyes everywhere. She's got drones, buzzing outside windows at night. I saw one by my bathroom. And cars too, black SUVs that patrol the streets. My wife swears they followed her home from the store? His voice cracked, but the information was valuable. Drones? I repeated, looking at Razor. His raised brow told me the same thing I felt. This wasn't just intimidation. This was surveillance. Karen wasn't just bossy, she was tactical. I clapped Fred's shoulder. Calm down, we've got this. Then I turned to my crew. New plan. Twitch. Get those drones. I want their feeds in my hands. Bear, take 2 men. Shadow those SUVs. Get plates, faces. Don't fight, just let them see you. Razor, you're with me. We need eyes on Karen herself. Her routine, her weak spots. Fred's mouth hung open. What are you going to do? I gave him a thin smile. We're going to cut the head off the snake. The strategy was simple. Gather intel for 60 hours. The last 12, action. When night fell over Fairlawn Ridge, the darkness buzzed with wings. Fred hadn't exaggerated. Small black drones hovered over rooftops, their red lights blinking like mechanical eyes. They were her spies, watching every move. Twitch crouched by the attic window, binoculars in hand, grinning like a kid in a candy store. Consumer-grade models, he whispered. Good cameras, weak security, their signals wide open. Give me an hour. He set up his laptop, wires and antennas snaking out like roots. His fingers flew across the keys. Meanwhile, Bear's recon paid off. 2 SUVs rotating the streets on a strict route. 4 men per car, ex-military or ex-cops, professionals. But they were predictable. Predictability is weakness. We picked our ambush point, a narrow alley, half hidden by overgrown bushes and a wooden fence. Quiet, controlled. The plan wasn't to kill, just to send a message. We rolled a dumpster halfway into the alley, forcing the SUV to slow. Then we waited. I crouched in the brush, Razor and Bear behind the fence, others spread in shadows. Our tools weren't guns, just flashlights and iron pipes. The sound came. An engine, steady. Headlights swept over the dumpster. The SUV slowed. Gave the signal, a whistle sharp in the dark. We moved as one. I smashed the driver's window, thrusting a high-powered flashlight in his eyes. He screamed, blinded. Razor yanked open a door, Bear dragging another man out like a rag doll. The rest scrambled for weapons but were too slow. In 10 seconds, it was over. Controlled, efficient, final. We zip-tied their hands, pulled hoods over, their heads, and lined 3 of them up neatly against the fence. A call from Fred to local deputies handled the cleanup. They'd find the 3 and remove them before Karen's people even knew what happened. But we kept the 4th, the one who looked like he was in charge. Back in Grandpa's garage, we sat him in a chair under a single dangling bulb. I pulled off his hood. Military haircut, tattoo of a snake devouring itself on his neck. He glared, trying to look tough. "Who are you?" he spat. "I'm the man whose grandfather you put in." "The hospital?" I said, circling him. "And you're going to tell me everything about Karen, about her orders, about what's next." He sneered. "Go to hell." "Wrong answer," I said. Just then, Twitch burst in, laptop glowing in his hands. He was grinning. "Boss, we're in. I control her whole drone network, and you need to see this." The screen lit up with a live feed, high above a lonely park, under a street lamp. Karen Tom stood there. She wasn't alone. She was speaking to a man in a sharp suit. I froze when I saw his face. My blood turned to ice. Marcus Thorne. 10 years ago in Kandahar, he betrayed my unit, sold our position, cost me 2 brothers in arms. The world thought he died that night. I thought so too. But here he was, alive, standing with Karen Tom. The HOA war had just become something else entirely. Confident, smug, his voice dripped with arrogance. "Relax, Karen. They're amateurs. A hiccup, nothing more. Your job is pressure. Mine is the heavy lifting. The deadline is unchanged. 72 hours. Without those final signatures, Omnicorp walks Omnicorp, a faceless giant, a tech empire with no soul. That was the prize. Tear down a neighborhood of memories and families to raise a monument of glass and steel for greed. And Thorne was the mastermind behind it all. The patterns snapped together with a sickening click. This was his trademark. Target the weak. Someone like Karen, greedy, corruptible. Twist them into pawns to spread chaos. Then, once the ground was scorched, his hired guns swept in, restoring order while he walked away with the spoils. He had done the same thing to my squad a decade ago. Our captive, the merc with the snake tattoo, caught the name. I saw it in his eyes, the recognition. I crouched down, steady, almost whispering. Marcus Thorne. That who you take orders from? The traitor who sells out his own men? The mask cracked. He'd thought himself a professional soldier, but the truth was poison, just another expendable pawn for a man despised across the entire Spec Ops community. His pride burned. Thorne's. A ghost, he muttered. Not anymore, I said, tapping the laptop. He's right here, and you're helping him terrorize old folks. How's that sit with you? He looked at the floor, silent. That silence was an answer. The deadline. What is it? Barely a whisper. Tomorrow night. The board signs off on the acquisition then. If Thorne doesn't have every property by that point, they'll pivot to Arizona. Karen's public 72-hour ultimatum was a smokescreen. The real clock was under 36 hours. Thorne was cornered, and a cornered animal is most dangerous. Then came the moment that turned my blood cold. On the drone feed, Thorne handed Karen an unmarked duffel. This will handle the holdouts. Placement tonight. By morning, half the block condemned. Tragic gas leak. Pipes too old. Mandatory evacuation. You'll be there, clipboard in hand, helping. Frightened families sign everything away. My chest tightened. A gas line. He wasn't just intimidating them. He was planning to blow them out. Kill dozens, including my grandfather, just to close a deal. This wasn't about property anymore. This was mass murder. The gray area between revenge and justice vanished. It was us or him. I glanced at Razor, then Bear. Their faces were hard stone. They understood. We weren't just bikers standing up for my grandfather. We were the only barrier between Thorne and catastrophe. We had everything. His face, his voice, his plan, all recorded. A hostage who could testify. We could go to the police. But would they act in time? Or bury us under? Red tape while Thorne's team struck? I couldn't take that chance. This was ours to stop. Thorne had crossed the line. He wanted to burn a neighborhood alive. We'd turn his fire into his downfall. The revelation sucked the oxygen out of the garage. This wasn't about bruised pride. Anymore. It was about saving lives. Thorne wasn't just a criminal, he was a cancer, and cancers get cut out. I looked at the merc. Miller. His pride was ash, his loyalty fractured. Where? I pressed. Where's the line rigged? He hesitated, then the dam broke. End of the cul-de-sac, Chestnut Street, old valve, weak infrastructure. Just a shaped charge to rupture it. Not a huge blast. The gas spreads, heavier than air, fills basements. A spark, a backfire. Boom. Whole block gone. Looks like an accident. My stomach twisted. My grandfather's home, 2 doors away. Neighbor Fred, who'd been lingering at the garage door, went pale. Chestnut? That's the Hendersons. They've got a baby. The abstract horror snapped into brutal reality. A baby. That was the last straw. I turned to Razor. He gave a grim nod. No words needed. We all knew. How many? I demanded. 2. Demo guy and a guard. 2 a.m. Low visibility, quiet streets. I checked my watch. Just after midnight. Less than 2 hours. All right, here's the plan. Twitch, your eyes in the sky. I want every detail. Razor, Bear, You're with me. The rest, containment, silent perimeter. 2 blocks out. Nobody in, nobody out. Fred's hands shook. Shouldn't we call the cops? The fire department? I gripped. His shoulder, firm but calm. Fred, by the time they untangle warrants, it's too late. We're it. Only us. Do you get that? He looked at me, then at the hardened faces around him. He swallowed, then nodded. Good. Then I need something more from you. A distraction. Real enough to draw eyes. At 1:55, you call 911. Report a prowler in your backyard. Sound terrified? You will be. That will pull patrol cars to the other side of the neighborhood. Exactly when Thorne's men expect 0 cops. That 10 minutes will save lives. Can you do that for the Hendersons? For their baby? Fred's color drained, then returned with a flicker of steel. A prowler. My backyard. 1:55. I'll do it. The timid neighbor was gone. A protector stood in his place. We left Miller tied in the garage, guarded. The stakes had never been higher. Failure wasn't on the table. Thorne wanted to turn Chestnut into rubble. We'd turn it into his trap. The cul-de-sac was a kill box, and his men were marching straight into it. We melted into the shadows, hedges and lawns swallowing us whole. 2 blocks out, the sentinels formed their silent ring of steel. Nothing got close. Twitch's voice crackled in my ear. Eyes on target. Panel van. 2 inside. Turning on to Chestnut. 500 yards. Razor Bear and I crouched behind a massive oak across from the gas valve. The van rolled to a stop. Engine killed. No lights. Silence. Heavy. Electric. 2 shadows stepped out. One, broad, armed with a short shotgun. The other, lean, carrying a weighty tool bag. Professionals, confident. They thought they were alone. There at the plate, Twitch's voice whispered in my ear. Demo's unpacking. I saw the smaller man kneel, pry up the metal cover, and fish out a flashlight. From the bag came a block of what looked like C4, wires trailing like veins. This was it. I clicked my tongue softly, the signal to strike. We didn't charge. We slid out of the darkness, 3 angles, silent, weight balanced on the balls of our feet. Their attention was buried in the hole. Classic tunnel vision. They never sensed us until Bear's massive hand clamped down on the guard's shoulder. The guard jerked, shotgun swinging. Fatal mistake. Razor was already a blur, no weapon, just flesh and bone. His palm smashed into the man's elbow, snap, and the shotgun dropped with a metallic clatter. A sharp strike to the neck, and the guard folded unconscious in the grass. 2 seconds. Clean. Surgical. The demo man looked up, frozen, explosive still clutched in hand. I was already there. His mouth opened, but my boot was faster, slamming into his chest. Air gone. He sprawled backward, the explosive tumbling harmlessly. Onto the lawn. I pinned his throat under my heel. Not crushing, just enough to remind him he was finished. Don't move, I growled. His face turned to pure fear. Zip ties cinched tight, both men dragged into shadow. Then Twitch's voice. Patrol car. At Fred's house. Distraction worked. You're clear. Fred had done it. Terrified, but brave. Picked up the explosive. Heavy. Real. Enough to rupture the main, flood the street with gas. In the bag, we found a burner phone. 1 number on speed dial. Boss. Marcus Thorne. A dangerous idea sparked. We'd stopped the hit. Now we could flip the board. I glanced at Razor. Time to set the stage. His grin said he already knew. We wouldn't just stop Thorne. We'd bury him in daylight. The van gave us treasures. More charges, utility blueprints, a laptop Twitch would devour. But what froze my blood was tucked under the driver's seat, a manila folder. Inside, fraudulent property contracts Karen Tom had bullied residents into signing, and stapled to them, a payment ledger, wire transfers from a shell company to a private account, Karen's account, proof. But then my hand stopped. My eyes locked on one signature. My chest hollowed out. Arthur Jensen, my grandfather. Not Thorne. Not Karen, him. Authorizing a $50,000 transfer. His handwriting, perfect. I'd seen it on every birthday card. No mistaking. My world tilted. The man I'd sworn to protect, the moral compass of this fight, listed as a collaborator. My stomach churned. Was everything a lie? His broken arm, was it staged? A performance to drag me in? Papers shook in my grip. Razor caught my face. Cal, you look like you've seen a ghost. Worse! My voice cracked. I showed him. He frowned at the name. My grandpa, I said flatly. Bear leaned over, muttered, doesn't track. And he was right. It didn't. Why would he take money from those bulldozers? Why rally neighbors only to betray them? Unless he'd tried to play both sides. Maybe the arm wasn't from defiance. Maybe it was punishment for breaking faith. The thought barely steadied me. It still made him part of their game. My first instinct was to confront him, march to his hospital bed and demand the truth. But we couldn't. Not yet. Thorne and Karen were still in play. The HOA meeting tomorrow night was the deadline. The stage was set, and I had to keep moving. We loaded the van, the evidence, the captives, back to our temporary command post, an abandoned garage one sentinel had quietly unlocked. Twitch was waiting, fingers flying over the captured laptop. Gold, he muttered. Pure gold. Thorne's op laid bare. Encrypted, but I'm tearing it down. Financials, contracts, even a draft press release about the tragic gas explosion. While Twitch worked, I stared at the ledger again. My blood screamed betrayal, but my bones whispered caution. Did I expose him or protect him? Family or truth? And then another thought. What if the money wasn't greed? What if it was strategy? He could have taken it to play them, only to back out later. They'd broken his arm not because he resisted, but because he faltered. A warning to fall in line. Maybe not. I shoved the torment down. Less than 24 hours left. We had evidence, prisoners, explosives, and Thorne's own files. The plan sharpened in my head. We wouldn't just show up at that HOA meeting, we'd turn it into a tribunal, broadcast, hijacked feeds, local cable, every screen in town, drone footage, ledgers, confessions, proof of corruption. The final act would play on their stage, and when the curtain fell, there would be no escape. Miller, the captured mercenary. His face on the screen said it all. Fear, guilt, and the heavy truth spilling from his lips. We weren't just showing the residents what was happening. We were tearing the masks off Karen Tom and Marcus Thorne in front of the entire neighborhood. As for my grandpa, I'd already made my choice. The answers would come later, once this war was over. First, I had to burn everything Thorne and Karen had built. This meeting wasn't about fences or property codes anymore. It was about judgment. And I was going to be judge, jury, and executioner. The HOA clubhouse was a dull beige box that smelled faintly of old coffee and fear. This was Karen Tom's domain. Tonight, it would be her downfall. By 6:30, the folding chairs were full, residents packed shoulder to shoulder, eyes wide, whispering nervously. At the front row sat my grandpa, his injured arm still in a sling. His face was unreadable stone, but his presence alone made my chest ache with conflict. At 7 sharp, Karen Tom entered like royalty, flanked by 2 massive bodyguards in black suits. Fresh muscle Thorne had flown in that very afternoon. Behind her came Marcus Thorne himself, grinning like a vulture circling carrion. He didn't bother hiding anymore. He was here to bask in victory. Karen's voice dripped with false concern as she stood before the crowd. I know times have been hard, but Omnicorp has graciously expedited their offer. Once you sign, you'll all receive fair compensation and safe homes elsewhere. She gestured toward contracts stacked neatly beside her. The wolf, dressed as a savior. That was my cue. I stood at the back, jeans and leather jacket, eyes locked on her. Quietly, into the mic at my collar, I murmured, "Showtime." The big screen behind Karen flickered, then cut to black. A heartbeat later, a drone's aerial footage filled the wall. The audio followed. Thorne's voice, crisp and damning. "By morning, half the block will be condemned, a tragic gas leak." The crowd gasped. Karen's face drained of color. Thorne exploded to his feet. "Shut it off!" he roared, but his words were drowned by the sound of doors slamming open. Razor, Bear, and a dozen iron sentinels marched in, blocking every exit. They carried no guns, just the kind of presence that froze men in their tracks. "Sit down, Marcus," I said evenly, walking the aisle. "The show's just starting." The screen shifted again. Bank transfers, evidence of bribes funneled straight into Karen's secret accounts. I'd blacked out my grandpa's name, but the proof against Karen was undeniable. The crowd erupted. Shouts of traitor, thief, liar filled the stale room air. Then came Miller's taped confession, laying out the entire conspiracy in painstaking detail. Thorne's eyes went wild. In one desperate motion, he drew a pistol, aiming, straight at me. "You're all dead!" he bellowed. Before he could squeeze the trigger, a new voice cut through the chaos. Calm, steady, familiar. "I wouldn't do that, Marcus. It was my grandpa." He stood, his good hand gripping a tiny recorder. "Because while Cal was collecting evidence, I was collecting mine." He pressed play. Thorne's voice filled the room again, this time a private call. "Just take the money, old man. Sign the papers. Nobody has to know you were my first contact." Then my grandpa's voice, sharp and unyielding. "The deal was to get rid of Karen, not destroy the neighborhood. I'm out." A scuffle, a crack. My grandpa's cry of pain, the sound of his arm breaking. The room fell silent. My chest tightened as the truth settled. My grandpa hadn't betrayed us. He'd walked into the fire trying to outplay monsters and paid the price. But before that relief could settle, the clubhouse doors slammed open again. This time it wasn't sentinels. Half a dozen state troopers stormed in, tactical gear gleaming, weapons raised. "Nobody move!" The trooper's voice thundered through the room. "Nobody move!" For a moment, time froze. State troopers lined the entrance, rifles raised. Thorne still had his pistol aimed at me, my cousins formed a human barricade, and the neighbors sat, frozen in their chairs, caught between shock and disbelief. Sergeant Sutton, a man with a face carved from stone, scanned the scene like a battlefield commander. His eyes swept over Thorne, the iron sentinels, the evidence still flashing across the big screen, then landed back on me. "Drop the weapon," Sutton ordered, his voice sharp and final. Thorne's hand trembled. Sweat poured down his face. For one terrifying second, I thought he might try his luck, spraying bullets and chaos across the room. But then his gaze met the troopers. Cold, unyielding, absolute. The fight drained out of him. His pistol clattered to the floor. The troopers, surged forward. In an instant, Thorne was face down on the table, wrists cuffed with brutal efficiency. Karen Tom didn't fare any better, dragged from her chair, crying and sputtering as her hands were shackled behind her back. It was over. Sutton turned to me. "You must be Cal Vance." His words weren't a question. "You're late," I said. For the first time, I saw the flicker of a smile on his stone-hard face. "Anonymous tip. Detailed. Said everything would be wrapped up by 7:30. His eyes shifted to my grandpa, who gave him the smallest nod. Of course. Grandpa had been one step ahead all along. My fury, my fight, my reckless push for justice, he had built the safety net behind it. He'd made sure the law would come crashing down the moment the truth was laid bare. Troopers hauled Thorne and Karen out, their once smug faces twisted with defeat. The crowd erupted. Neighbors cried, hugged, cheered. Relief spread through the room like fire finally extinguished. Even Fred, usually the first to complain, lifted a trembling thumbs up in my direction. I pushed through the sea of relieved faces until I found Grandpa. He leaned against the wall, pale but steady. For a moment, I couldn't speak. After everything, I didn't know what words were enough. "You had me worried, old man," I finally muttered. He let out a rough laugh. "Had to. Karen was just a symptom. Thorne, he was the disease. The payment slip, the betrayal, the doubt. All of it had been part of his gambit, his way of drawing the serpent out. He'd signed under the guise of cooperation, then immediately funneled the proof to the state. He'd pretended to play along just long enough to expose the truth. He looked me in the eyes. "I'm sorry I let you think I'd crossed the line, but your anger, that fire, it's your strength. If you'd known the truth, you would have held back, and I couldn't let you." I understood now. He hadn't betrayed us. He had risked everything, his name, his body, his own family's trust, to protect the neighborhood. He hadn't just fought a battle. He'd played the longest game of all. The next morning, Fairlawn Ridge woke to a new reality. The black. SUVs were gone. Drones no longer circled the sky. The news blasted the downfall of Karen Tom and Marcus Thorne. Omnicorp severed ties immediately, their stock price tumbling into chaos. The HOA board resigned in shame. An emergency election was called. Against all odds, Fred was chosen as president. His first act? Shredding nearly all of Karen's petty rules. That evening, the neighborhood gathered in Grandpa's backyard for a barbecue. The air carried laughter instead of fear. Even the Iron Sentinels, once feared as outlaws, stood awkwardly with paper plates, treated as heroes by the same people who had once crossed the street to avoid them. As the sun dipped low, Grandpa and I stood by his newly restored flagpole. With one good arm, he raised the stars and stripes. Together we watched it unfurl, catching the fading light. "You know," he said quietly, "there's a thin line between doing what's right and doing what's necessary." "And where did we land?" I asked. He looked at the flag, at the families laughing on the lawn, at the children finally playing without fear. "Right where we needed to be," he answered. And for the first time in years, I understood what home really meant. Peace wasn't the absence of noise. It was the presence of safety. And sometimes to earn it, you had to march straight into the fire.